Hello, this is Unsung with GameLeap, and in today's video, we're going to be giving you the patch 13.24 ADC / bot lane tier list. At the time of recording this, the B patch has already shipped through, there have been no changes to marksman's, so this is going to be the final definitive tier list for the rest of the season. Make sure to like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're going to be uploading tons of content for the upcoming season, and we don't want you guys to miss out. Now that that's out of the way, let's go ahead and get right into this tier list, starting off with C tier. As far as bot lane goes, there aren't champions that are super weak in this role. It's really hard to make a carry that is not viable or on the weaker end. The champions in this tier have intentionally been kept weak by Riot to ensure that they don't dominate solo queue as well as pro play. Aphelios is a great example of this. This champion isn't necessarily weak, but he does require a team with hands to play around him, which is not going to happen too often in solo queue. When paired with Thresh, and a competent Thresh at that, Aphelios is a god tier pick. But solo queue being solo queue, this doesn't happen too often. Avoid this champion at all costs. He is too overnerfed. This champion will do a little bit better in Season 14, hopefully, but as of right now, Aphelios is in the dumpster. It is very sad to see this champion as weak as he is. There are just better picks for solo queue. Senna is our next pick for C tier. This champion has been, of course, overnerfed out of the bot lane role. There is no way to balance Senna as a flex pick between support and AD carry. If we're able to pick her as an AD carry, then we can't counter her as a support. You get the idea. All it takes to fix this champion in a carry role is a small change to her soul generation, but nobody likes playing against Senna AD carry. This champion's really obnoxious and should be kept on the weaker end. Corki has not been a viable bot laner for quite some time, and this is largely due to his success in pro play. The package makes Corki with his current kit way too strong around Drake fights. Drake fights, of course, are the name of the game right now. Corki is kept weak intentionally. He is primarily a mid laner and will remain that way until Riot readjusts his kit. Now that we covered our C tier, let's go ahead and move on to B tier. B tier is where we're going to find champions that struggle just a tad in solo queue environments. These are going to be champs like Xayah, Sivir, and Kalista. Our first pick for B tier is going to be a bit controversial, and that's going to be Xayah. Xayah is really strong in pro play, and if you watch Worlds at all, this is of course one of the most highly contested AD carries in the entire tournament. However, in solo queue, this doesn't translate as well. Xayah is shorter range with no mobility aside from the movement speed bonus that she gets from her W. This makes it hard to actually carry a game in solo queue. Usually the carries that either have an insane amount of damage or more mobility are the ones that are going to find more success. Xayah's front-to-back teamfighting nature ensures that our team is always going to be on the back foot unless we have a perfectly structured fight. Yes, Xayah's art is great for peeling herself, but in solo queue, by the time that we're actually done peeling herself, our entire team might be dead, and thus Xayah is not that effective. With the good support, of course, this can be changed, but for solo queue climbing, this champion's winner is dead even 50%. I would not recommend her as a primary carry for climbing. Kalista is in a similar boat. She excels at one thing, and that is snowballing the early game. There's no reason to pick Kalista over a champion like Samira, who does the same thing, but easier and also better. If you're a Kalista player, do not let this deter you. She is one of, if not the strongest early game snowballing ADC in the game, but it does require a large amount of work and perfect execution. Great champion when played properly. That being said, the proper scenario pops up pretty infrequently. There are just better picks out there. Now that we have briefly covered our B tier, let's move on to A tier. A tier is where we find champions that are a lot more well-rounded, or they have fantastic synergy with the majority of current bot laners. Caitlyn is a great example of this. Caitlyn has very good matchups with both Engage and Enchanter supports. Her scaling is very immense after the last set of buffs that she received to her crit ratios, and once she hits her 3-item spike, she turns into an absolute steamrolling champion. You do not need to be a Caitlyn expert to get a lot of value out of this champion, but when you are, she will not hold you back at all. This is just a really solid champion that will carry you as far as you need to go. She has good early game, her mid game is a little bit lackluster, and her late game is ridiculous with headshot crits. It is not uncommon to crit for over 1400 on champions when you have the proper build. What brings her down a tier compared to the S tier carries is of course going to be her inconsistent mid game and her need to win lane. If we don't win lane on Caitlyn, then she generally falls off before we can hit her ultra strong late game, which makes her a good pick with weaknesses. Samira is another great example of this. Samira is easily an S+ tier champion when you have the proper engage support that plays the correct way for you, but Samira's stubby range and her weaknesses when she does fall behind prevent her from being an ultra strong pick. Like Caitlyn, she's situationally one of the stronger champions in the game, but this is not compared to S tier or even OP tier, which are just a level above this. Kai'Sa has also fallen into a similar level. This champion's still really good, but her requirement of an engage support kind of holds her back compared to most of the other roster. If any of the champions on this tier list catch your eye, head on over to GameLeap.com where we have the best tips and tricks videos to get you onto Summoner's Rift as quickly as possible. The links are in the description box down below. I'll see you on the website. Now that we covered the standout A tier picks, let's go ahead and talk about S tier. Let's first cover Lucian. Lucian's buffs have made him better in the early game, which is good because of course this champion needs to snowball. His 500 range makes it hard to compete with lethal tempo champions, champions, but the sheer amount of damage that he's able to output and at the pace that he's able to output it at, it's kind of hard to contest him. Lucian has good synergy with both engage and enchanter supports due to Light Slinger, however his stubby range does really hold him back. His damage is good, his bullying is okay, and his mid game is great. If we're able to hold a snowball on this champion, his high mobility allows him to do a bunch of things on the map, which makes him a great pick, especially on the current patch. But if you do fall behind, you will lose the game. You cannot fall behind on Lucian in order to make him work, which is why he's only an S tier champion while having the amount of damage that he does have. Ezreal is in a similar boat as well. Normally I would have this champion in OP tier with his current win rate, but if we look at the OP tier champions later on in the video, a lot of them actually counter Ezreal or outscale him. This is scary for this champion and it kind of knocks him down a tier. I would say that when you play Ezreal properly, he's easily an OP tier, especially in his current iteration. He is way stronger than most other AD carries, but his bad matchups and his reliance on getting items is what holds him back. 3-item Ezreal is playing a different game of League of Legends, but unfortunately his bad matchups are what bring him down. Our number one most OP pick for the S tier is going to be Varus, but only with the Radiant Virtue build. The Radiant Virtue build covers a lot of Varus' weaknesses and still allows him to get off his insane sustained damage. Without Virtue, Varus simply gets blown up way too quickly, but with the Press the Attack Virtue build or even Lethal Tempo, we're allowed to get off multiple rotations of our spells on our Blight stacks. Varus, when he's able to pop Blight consistently, is one of the scariest DPS machines in the entire game because he can machine gun spells out one after another whenever he gets these Blight procs. A normal Varus combo consists of using his R, waiting for it to stack, using the WQ, then we pop the Blight, apply a couple more auto attacks, use our E, and then we have our WQ back up again for another rotation. This is a crazy amount of damage if we're allowed to get it off. Radiant Virtue makes us tanky enough to ensure that this happens. This build is crazy, abuse it while you can until Season 14 comes. The only two reasons that Varus is not an OP tier are of course his bad matchup spread into the current meta champions, as well as his low mobility. The low mobility on Varus makes him an easy target until we get our Virtue. It's really hard to play against this when your team is feeding. Solid champion, invest some time into him. Alrighty, now that we talked about the S tier champions, let's go ahead and move on to Broken tier. Our first pick of Broken tier is going to be MF. If you're below Diamond, there hasn't really been a period of time where MF has been weak. What makes MF so strong is her high potential for bullying. A lot of the champions that we have on the list require an item or two before they get off the ground. MF is capable of keeping him down during the lane phase and then having a stronger mid game than them. If we engage in a strict 1v1 against a champion like Vayne, we can simply stat check her before she has the time to kill us due to our strong early game base damage. For MF, we can go the regular lethality build, or we could even opt into a Kraken Slayer on hit build if we have an enchanter support. This gives her a degree of flexibility that isn't really common on AD carries, and of course the only thing that holds her down is her low mobility. But the low mobility doesn't matter when we have so much damage. One well-placed Q will ensure that that Vayne player does not get the chance to lane and thus scale into you, making her an easy candidate for Broken tier. If you keep your distance and you play the champion appropriately, she will scale and give you a whole lot of value. Next up, we have Karthus. This champion has been a bot lane menace for months. It is so tiring playing against Karthus in general. If you have good skill shot accuracy, this champion is one of the strongest bullies in the entire game. He's able to walk up to you level 1 and kill you before you're even able to take half his HP. He scales into a global threat really quickly after his first item, and it only gets worse from there. You have to build Zhonya's Hourglass, Banshee's Veil, or Edge of Night against Karthus, which ensures that every person on the enemy team is at minimum playing 3,000 gold to not get chunked out to half HP. This champion instantly wins every objective fight by simply clicking his R before the objective actually spawns, and just deals a stupid amount of damage. Karthus, even with the nerfs, is still a very easy candidate for Broken tier. You need to be abusing this champion. Whenever you have a Leona, lock in Karthus, it's a free win. Also, for those games where your team drafts a little bit too much AD, lock in the Karthus as well, that's another free win. Twitch is our next choice for Broken tier. This champion has flown under the radar for quite some time, and this is largely due to how severe the crit item nerfs post 13.10 were. Twitch gets to go first item Blade of the Ruined King, which is one of, if not the highest damage first item that you could build on most AD carries, especially one that has an on-hit synergy like Twitch. And from there, we can build whatever situational item looks good for the game. If the enemy team is very tanky, we can go Rune-Ons into a mythic item like Rageblade. If the enemy team isn't tanky and they have a lot of assassins, we can go straight up Blade of the Ruined King into Radiant Virtue to ensure that we can't get tapped, then we can buy a Rune-Ons afterwards. Or if the enemy team has a balanced composition, we can go Infinity Edge and then 3-shot basically every champion on the map. To top it all off, if our team is AD heavy, we can also go AP because it has been buffed back again. This gives Twitch a versatility that isn't really seen in the bot lane anymore. This sort of tool selection by itself gives us an advantage over most enemies, but Twitch's insanely powerful ulti also pushes him over the edge. Bot lane meta is close range champions that blow you up with minimal counterplay or ultra long range champions that scale with lethal tempo. Twitch's ultimate gives him an instant range advantage over those champions, ensuring that we get at minimum one auto over our opponent before they're able to turn and interact with us. This life lead will result in you winning a lot of duels. So out of the gate, Twitch has an itemization advantage over most carries, as well as a range advantage due to his ultimate. This is only made stronger by the fact that Twitch can roam and thus doesn't have to lane bot lane. If our support isn't doing too hot, we can walk mid, pick up a free kill or two, and then snowball the game from there. It doesn't matter then if our Lulu player does not have hands. super strong champion, you need to be abusing him before Season 14 starts. Next up in Broken Tier is going to be Jinx. What makes this champion so strong despite her crippling lack of mobility is just how volatile she is. If Jinx wins bot lane, you are going to lose the game because she's going to run over your entire team in about 2 seconds. Jinx is one of the best resetting passives in the entire game, and when paired with lethal tempo, it is disgusting just how easily you can turn a teamfight. The amount of pressure that Jinx exerts over just being alive in a teamfight is hilarious, but it's only made 10 times worse if she's allowed to take a structure beforehand. One single structure will result in a reset, which then gets her a takedown on a champion, which gets her another structure, and so on and so forth. Even with the nerfs to how strong her passive is, it is not uncommon for Jinx to take your inhib turret, take your inhib, kill one of your team members, and then destroy your Nexus turrets before you're even able to blink an eye. This champion is disgustingly strong in these volatile, lower elo games. I highly recommend that you play her. Just be aware that you have to play around your summoner spells and Gale Force really well. Ashe is next up in Broken Tier. Unlike Jinx, she doesn't have a resetting passive. What she does have, however, is a disgustingly strong slow at all stages of the game and the ability to build Trinity Force. Trinity Force is one of the reasons why crit is largely so weak. It has great stats on just one item. It allows you to be a little bit tanky so you don't get blown up by an errant breeze on your marksman roll, and it has just a little bit of ability haste, so we're able to make more use out of our E's and out of our arrows. Ashe is very strong because of this item, and if Trinity Force wasn't so strong, Ashe wouldn't be so high in OP tier. But currently, this champion is broken, largely due to Trinity Force and the amount of damage she's able to pump out, especially when paired with lethal tempo. You need to be playing her in most of your games. If the enemy team has an assassin or they have an easy way to dive you, simply hold onto your R, or you can literally just walk away with Ghost on and then wait for them to turn away before you start slowing them, and then you can keep them caught out. Aside from her low mobility, Ashe doesn't really have a clear-cut weakness right now. Her damage is super high, her initiation is really good and consistent, the cooldown on her initiation is low, and her R is of course great self-peel. Number 1 in Broken Tier is going to be Vayne. This champion's win rate and pick rate are straight up illegal. Much like Ezreal, a high-skilled ADC should not be so high in win rate with this kind of pick rate. Vayne is completely imbalanced, largely due to Trinity Force and how strong it makes her bot lane. You can go Shiv into Trinity Force on the champion to alleviate her bad wave clear. Her mobility makes her really strong. If the enemy AD carry ever falls behind, we can easily duel them in the side lane. If our team isn't looking too great, we can go for a split push if we want to, and we're also great at team fighting. Vayne currently has no real weakness due to how weak the crit AD carries are. She runs away with games very quickly and just keeps going due to how strong her scaling is. The bonus tankiness that we receive from Triforce on this champion makes her incredibly hard to dive. There is no real winning against Vayne on this patch. You need to be picking or banning Vayne in every single one of your games. You will not regret it, I promise you. Anyways, this is Unsung with GameLeap. Thank you all for watching and hope that you all have a wonderful day. I'll see you in the next video.